Hi guys, this is Freckley here. Welcome back to the All Mimics Explained Part 2. Now, thanks to Secret of the Mimic, the books are no longer canon within the game continuity, so I'm gonna try and clear up a few things regarding all the mimics. Now, this does look like a crack theory board. So, yeah, I'll try to do my best to explain this the most I can without confusing anyone in regards to this. So here I go. Now, there will be theories on here you may not agree with, mostly because the mimic in himself has like many different versions, and Glitchtrap in himself is a pretty contentious topic. Now, you may have noticed I don't have Burn Trap, or well, VST on here, mainly because VST is just too confusing to put on here, and I'm saving that for VST theory. But I wanted to do this first just to clear up some stuff. So first of all, we've got M0, who's also known as M1 by Edwin in the taper near the Springlock Theatre room. The mimic that David said is pretty scary. Now, I couldn't actually get any of because we don't know what the mimic's M0's original head looked like. So I just got the VommittedThoughts version of like the mimic's head as like the placeholder for now, but we can just improve that as we go along. So we have M0 with his original head. He just doesn't have any legs at that point, and he's got another hand that isn't the four-fingered one because his was broken off by the vent and looks different. So then we've got M0's dumped in basement 1 in MCM. He then gets repaired by Gary, then turns into this guy, and then becomes Sleepy Moon, which is the costume that Gary was wearing when he fell into the Storytime showroom. And we know this because there's a massive hole going down basement 1 through the showroom and then through the gateway to the theatre with a puppet show in. So then M0 goes into the suit. Gary thankfully gets out of the suit before he crushes him, and then I mean, this is pretty contentious with whatever ending is canon, but it doesn't matter because in both endings, in the fire ending, I presume that would be why M0 looks burnt and rusted because of the MCM fire, but it may also be because he was built from materials from Fallfest, who knows. So he gets excavated out of the suit. And then, in the canon version of the epilogues, because the books aren't canon, in the canon version, M0 wears the Death Trap costume that M2 had worn previously. Now, I haven't seen anyone who's done an edit of like M2 with like well, not really M2, but like the Death Trap costume with M0's endo in yet, so I just had to use the M2 run for now. And then at some point it gets spring locked in the thigh, which we can see here, which then causes it to get deactivated, and then his arm there, whatever hand he had there originally, gets broken off in the vent when it collapses, and then he gets his four-fingered one, which he has now. And apparently he gets freed by VST, who then takes off his deactivation switch, meaning that's the reason why there's a weird USB port on the back of his head, and he also has these parts of cloth you can see on here, and on here. And then we have the Fnaf 1 AR endo. Now it may look like M0 becomes the Fnaf one, but the Endo 1, the AR Endo 1, but that is not the case. I simply just put it there. I was going to explain this. So there was a theory saying that the reason why Grimmik's limbs look a bit like the AR Fnaf 1 Endo, the AR Endo 1s, is because in order to shrink himself, because of course M0 doesn't have the ability to shapeshift or expand or contrast, he had to reconfigure his body with pieces of the Endo 1 from Fnaf AR, because the Endo 1s are in Fnaf AR are described to have the same exact abilities as the mimic endoskeleton we see here. So that is why M0 uses this endoskeleton to reconfigure himself into the Grimmick costume, and he makes this costume using the parts from the Ruben Lion and some parts from the elephant bird, well, the penguin. But I don't think he actually took parts from the elephant and penguin costumes that were in the room because they don't look scathed. And some people think the Scooper ending is canon ending because of that one, because of the Help Wanted 2 version of M0 we see being Grimmick. So that is pretty interesting to note in particular, and it does make sense for the AR Endo ones to be down here, because in Tangled there is the AR animatronics, like the AR replicas, so it would make sense. So now we're moving on to the endoskeleton that Edwin eventually made in Basement 2, which is the M1 Endo. Now, this is another M1 Endo. I'm sorry if this is getting a bit confusing. So, this Endo starts copying Fiona, and how it does is from the audio logs of Fiona that were compiled in the Mycelium Men. These Mycelium Men toys that, like, repeat stuff and like that. So you have to watch, like, John Fnaf's video in order to understand how M1 is not possessed by Fiona, but let's move on. So, M1 starts mimicking Fiona, you know, and then apparently Mixis is going to get built. I didn't put Mixis on here specifically because I was going to save Mixis for a different video, because I have found some very interesting stuff regarding Mixis and William Afton you may as well want to see. So, if this video gets, well, not really, but if you want to see that, just tell me in the comment section. So we've also got the F10 machine. Now, Edwin starts production on Mixis and then builds the F10 machine because he starts to grow tired of M1. Mainly because, well, unless he did actually build Mixis to contain it. Look, I'll go into the timeline in a bit of detail later. So M1 gets transported into F10 and 4, then becomes Night Marionette, when, I don't know if this is a bit speculatory, then becomes the Night Marionette, reason why the Night Marionette plushes exist, and then becomes the Storyteller tree in the canon version of the Storyteller. Now, just to let you know, I don't think M1 is Tangle. I believe Bronze films his theory about Tangle, mainly because of, well, Tangle. I don't think Tangle is M1 mainly, but I still do believe that M1 does still exist in some way, but we will get to that on future theory videos and Secret to Mimic. Maybe even VST theory will prove that, who knows. So now we're going on to M2. Now, I'm going to have to lay out some ground rules in regards of these mimics. So, this endoskeleton housed in this program may be a copy of this one, because they're both referred to as M1, but I don't know if that's the case. But we won't touch on that. So, M2 is a copy of M1, or is M1, because if you think about it, whenever you transfer something from a computer to another place, all you do is create a copy, and the original is just left there, meaning that the M1 in F10 and 4 is actually a copy of M1, and the M1 still left in the endoskeleton became M2. Which is why M2 mimics lines from M1. Yeah, I know it's a bit confusing, isn't it? But that's just that's how computers work. Right, so M2 starts mimicking David. Edwin gets frustrated with M2 and beats him up for doing his job. Now, of course, I was gonna put Tiger Rock in here, but he's pretty self-explanatory. After the agony of the agony from M2 getting beaten up forms Tiger Rock. And then M2 starts copying Edwin's aggression and, you know, becomes this guy. The M2 we know, he starts wearing costumes. And then he becomes Death Trap, who we see here. And that's basically it in regards to him. Depending on what ending you get, he reverts to his David personality, or he keeps this aggressive side. It doesn't matter which way, I do think he does get Arnold's dated either. Which we will come to in a minute when we talk about Patient 46. Now, in the canon version of Tiger Rock, I presume M2 is Tiger Rock and M1 is Storyteller, even though the two are hinted, even though Tiger Rock and Storyteller are hinted to be one and the same in the books. However, I believe this is just an inconsistency and non-congruence with the main continuity. Yes, I know I'm using very complicated words, but just stick with me for a minute. Mainly because of the fact that there's only one Mimic program that's mentioned, and that's Mimic 1, there are no others. Now, the Mimic OQs haven't been documented because we don't know whether they're canon or not, so we're just going to leave that there. Now, we've got Agony. So, Agony is the negative version of Remnant. It's not possessed by spirits, it's not a spiritual energy, it's just an emotion, some sort of emotion that, like, a human can transfer into a metallic object. And the Agony from M2 getting beaten up by Edwin, this Agony is absorbed by M0, which explains his violent tendencies and ruin. Because he ignores, like, the whole orders to disassemble stuff and starts disassembling humans on purpose, so this is probably why. So now we go over to the Mimic's original head, M0's. Now, the current theory I have about why his head is being replaced is actually pretty simple. His head either got taken off because they wanted to reset the endo, or because Afton wanted to use this head for some reason. And the reason why M0 has both memories from M1 and M2 is mainly because M0 himself has gained that agony from M2 of Edwin's aggressiveness, so he's carrying that over. And he did that while he had the original head on, which meant the original head also has this agony, but I'm not really sure on these details. So, the original head gets scanned into Help Wanted 1, along with the Proto-Mimics. Now, I haven't put in the Proto-Mimics on here, because the Proto-Mimics are a bit confusing. Now, people believe the Proto-Mimics are a part of a hive mind, but I do not think this is the case. Mainly because in Secret of the Mimic, not all Proto-Mimics are hostile, they just run away or sometimes just wander around in one position. Now, we'll just move on to M0's original head. So this head becomes the Spring Trap, or Glitch Trap as it's called. Then, once he finds the Spring Bonnie mascot costume asset in Pizza Party, he then becomes Glitch Trap. And then he absorbs more of Afton's agony and absorbs more corrupt programming from Help Wanted 1, over time becoming this creature in Princess Quest. Next, he uses this Vanny mask to assimilate a lot of people. He tried to do it with Jeremy, but it didn't work, so he left a scar down his face as a result. He uses the Vanny mask to plan to clone of himself. Now, the cloning process of Glitch Trap is a bit weird. It's never really explained properly in the games, but remember when I said that a program can be transferred to one place while leaving the one behind? Well, Glitch Trap, that is how Glitch Trap cloning works. So he transfers a copy of himself into Vanessa's brain, turning her into Vanny. And then a copy of Glitch Trap presumably becomes the lunar, dark eclipse we see in that one minigame in Balloon World, but I'm not sure. Maybe this dark eclipse is William Afton, or something in the Balloon World arcade machine, I'm not sure. And then we have Helpy here in Help Wanted 2. Now this is very debatable whether or not he's actually Glitch Trap, like Dr. Rabbit, or whether he's Vanny, but I'm not sure. But just to let you all know, these two Helpies here are the same character, but they are not Helpy from Fnaf 6, who is the Helpy we see in Help Wanted 2, who we have to operate on. So they're not the same character. They're not the same character as the Helpy we know, though. So then, after, well, I'm gonna go into Help Wanted 2 in a bit, but after, like, Dr. Rabbit or Glitch Trap is killed, depending on your interpretation of Help Wanted 2's ending, Vanny eventually becomes this Helpy and ends up assisting in M0's escape, presumably because she wants to use M0 as a new body, or maybe to I don't know, maybe she wants to use M0 as like a bodyguard or whatever because she wants Cassie's body, but I'm not sure. Next, we have, well, this is going to be a bit different because usually most of these go a Glitch Trap gets implanted into Gregory and becomes GGY. That could happen. However, I don't know whether or not this is congruent with the games or whether someone actually inputted Gregory's initials as a bit of a red herring, I'm not sure. So we go over to this, the Glitch Trap puppet is made. And these are like little implants. This is how a Glitch Trap clone is born, basically. So we go over to like M2, and the mask is used on M2 at some point. which implants a copy of Glitchtrap into M2, which eventually turns him into Dr. Rabbit. And this is also foreshadowed in science experiments with Dr. Scraptrap, which is a very, very specific arcade cabinet, as well because it foreshadows Dr. Rabbit, and also mentions Scraptrap, who's associated with William Afton, so that could be it. But he's also still affected by Edwin's agony, making him aggressive. Right, there's a lot to get through. I'm gonna explain this. So, in regards to the tapes and Patient 46, I don't think Gregory is Patient 46, mainly because his behaviour in the books is not congruent with the games, and as a result, this devalues the importance of Vanny. But because we don't see M2 in the games, and we already have like a clear reason as to why, I guess maybe that doesn't devalue our importance, but I'm not sure whether or not this fits the story perfectly. So, in regards to M2 being Dr. Rabbit and Patient 46, 4625 is the frequency that Edwin uses to try and communicate with Fiona, which doesn't work. We also see that Vanessa's tapes end at 46, which is basically when she gets controlled by Vanny and she gets transferred to the Pizzaplex. We also learn of this other patient called Patient 46, who apparently was theorized to be Gregory or Vanny, but I do not believe this to be the case. So apparently, Patient 46 is told to be talking to a rabbit person. Now, the person with bunny ears may be Vanny, maybe Glitchtrap, or maybe Mixus, but this rabbit person may be Vincent, or well, VST, depending on your interpretation. Mine says Mixus or VST because they're more associated with like the VST like theory that I've been making over time. You know the one I've been like making for over 8 months. Anyway, so Patient 46 is described to like hiding in costumes, which is very similar to M2. Is a loner, which matches M2 because he doesn't have a David to be friends with. And most of all, he likes spending time at the Pizzaplex and just likes going indoors, which M2 never escapes the factory on his own accord in MCM. And even when the data diver is like, even when he like kills one of the employees, he never takes their data divers, which implies that he would only grab the data. He actually just wants to stay at MCM. And it makes sense that MCM is under the Pizzaplex, and that's the reason why M2 likes the Pizzaplex and just wants to stay there, mainly because it's his home. His home is underneath the Pizzaplex. And not only that, but he likes stuff being more eerie than entertaining, which matches up with the Glitchtrap very well. But he also makes programs that speak back to him like a mimic program. Now, one thing I've literally seen everybody miss is that this perfectly aligns with the Fire ending, where M2 takes the data diver off of Arnold. Now, the data diver has M2's blueprints on it, meaning with these blueprints he can make his own mimic programs, and is also preventing Fazbear from grabbing the blueprints, like how Edwin didn't want Fazbear to have the ingredients to make another mimic. And so, if Patient 46 is making these mimic programs out of nowhere, wouldn't it be funny if this was M2 who has the data diver is making these mimic programs? I don't know. It can't be a coincidence, right? It has to connect somehow. But one thing I also noticed that very messes with the idea with nearly every Patient 46 theory is when I was looking in the translations, I might pop it up on screen. The official translations in Spanish and Japanese for the Patient 46 tapes, these are the official translations by Steelwool, by the way. Every time Patient 46 is mentioned, they always have a feminine pronoun. Now I know this because I do Spanish, so I would probably know about this referring to a girl, but in Japanese, I don't really know Japanese, so I literally had to look it up on Reddit and find out, So Patient 46 is always referred to with a feminine pronoun, which I find very, very interesting, which may be suggested that Patient 46 is Vanny or Charlie, or maybe somebody we don't even know yet, but I don't know, it kind of messes with the whole balance of the theory, and people say, well, it has to be Gregory because the book said this, but if we take God David into account, the theory that T-Dread's made, then Gregory could very well be just a stand-in for David in that story, about the concept of a David being, you know, Patient 46. Now, Gregory is mimicking David, kind of, and M2 is mimicking David, kind of, so it would be particular in Scott Cawthon fashion that instead of Gregory being Patient 46, it would be M2, because it just fits well better in the story. And I also noticed that M2 does a very similar pose to Glitchtrap in a very similar ending to the Pizza Party ending in Secret and the Mimic. I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was very interesting to note, which is foreshadowing M2's eventual possession by Dr. Rabbit. Now, I haven't put Freddy on here for obvious reasons. The obvious reasons are, he's pretty like, I don't know what it is, but it's pretty frustrating to figure out most of the time, but Freddy has green eyes in one of the teasers, implying he's M1, and then there's the specific speech he does. Now, I do believe Bronze Film's theory that, like, Freddy is supposed to be Arnold, but I believe Freddy has a copy of M1 in him, and is also possessed by Arnold at the same time. So those glitch both theories were technically true, but not for like Glitchtrap though. So we haven't. I don't think we need to bring William Afton into this mostly, because the only part of the Mimic family we need to bring William Afton into this is apparently Mixus. So I'll explain that when it comes to it, and we will explain VST and VST theory, just I didn't want to put him here for obvious reasons. Now, hope you guys enjoyed today's theory video, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I will see you guys in whatever video I do next on this channel. I'll see you guys in a bit. Bye.